My God reigns, our God reigns, Lord, you reign above every name. My God reigns, our God reigns, Lord, you reign above every name. With power and majesty, dominion, authority, you reign.
hail the great I am.
Oh, hail the great I am.
The only King who died and rose.
The only King who died and rose again.
The only King whose reign will never end.
The only King whose reign will never end.
Everybody say, He reigns.
He reigns over all
The earth.
the earth.
He reigns.
He reigns over all the earth.
Clap your hands and say, He reigns.
He reigns over all
The earth.
the earth.
Say, He reigns.
He reigns over all
The earth.
the earth.
No crown of thorns can end His reign. No tomb and no grave can end His reign. No death on a cross can end. Nothing on earth can end. Everybody say, He reigns.
He reigns over all the earth.
I need you to get excited tonight. Come on.
He reigns over all
The earth.
the earth.
He reigns.
He reigns over all
The earth. He reigns.
He reigns over all
The earth.
the earth.
Now come on and clap your hands in here. If you know Jesus reigns, make some noise. No one can beat Him. No one can kill Him. He reigns forever. No one can beat Him.
No one can beat him. No one can kill him.
No one can dethrone Him.
No one can dethrone him.
He reigns.
He reigns. He reigns.
No one can beat Him.
No one can beat him.
No one can kill Him.
No one can kill him.
No one can dethrone Him.
No one can dethrone him.
He reigns.
He reigns.
He reigns.
He reigns.
No one can beat Him.
No one can beat him.
No one can kill Him.
No one can kill him.
No one can dethrone Him.
No one can dethrone
Come
him.
on, say He reigns. He reigns. No one can beat Him. And good evening and welcome to His Word to Ponder. I am Pastor Robert. Thank you for tuning in this evening as we continue on in our study of the book of Genesis. This evening we are taking a look at the story of Joseph. I've titled this particular portion of our series God's Preparation, and remember, I'm showing you as we move along through the book of Genesis that God desires to have a relationship with His creation, and He's outlining for us through the book how He goes about having a relationship with mankind. And so we have been walking gingerly, taking a look at some of the patriarchs, but taking a look at other aspects of what the Lord our God is requiring for us to know as we walk through this study. One of the things that I want you to note is that Moses is the author of this particular book, and what he's declaring at this stage in the story is that the Israelites have been called by God, called His people. If you were with us this past Sunday, I got to introduce to you when the name change came about from Jacob in his old identity to his new identity in Israel. He had 12 sons, and as those 12 sons become a part of the nation of Israel, now when we are looking in the future from this point in the scriptures to when the children of Israel are about to cross over into the promised land, and Moses has received these writings, these understandings of how the world came into existence, and not only how the world was created by the Lord our God, but the rise and fall of mankind, understanding that the fall with Adam and Eve was not the ending falls of mankind. Mankind has been falling ever since, but mankind became wicked and evil once again. God had to address that issue. He saved a remnant, as we see in the story of Noah. And then we come to man populating the earth once again, becoming more wicked again, and God having to address that. We also continue to see that mankind is trying to understand where they fit at in creation. They understand that there's some supernatural being. Therefore, mankind comes together and they want to build this tower that reaches up to the heavens. And God, at that particular portion of the scriptures, he confuses mankind. He confuses their language. They're not able to talk to one another. He disperses them throughout the world. And then we come to the calling of the patriarchs of the faith. We get the calling of Abraham, and then there's Isaac, and then there's Jacob, and now we come to the preparation of the nation of Israel, and not only the preparation of the nation, but the preparation of a servant. And that servant is Joseph. And that's why I said today's story is about the story of Joseph. I would invite you to come back on Sunday as we will continue in the story of Joseph, when after Joseph has gone through his rise and fall in preparation. He is now set up as the right hand of Pharaoh, and there's a famine in the land, and the family comes to receive some helps, and they actually receive helps from Jacob's favorite son, Joseph. But let us take a look at today as we walk through these scriptures. There's some four major points that I want to outline to you as we deal with this. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and turn in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. I want to read to you verses 5 through 11. You're not going to see the scriptures up on the screen. I'm going to ask, please, that you would grab your Bibles and that we move accordingly through the scriptures. It goes on to share with us, starting in verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brother said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream. And this time the sun and the moon, the 11 stars, were bowing down to me." And when he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I, your brothers, actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. What I want to share with you as we begin our study this evening, that God has called many into the faith in various ways. When it came to Abraham, he had a voice, and Abraham was able to understand and hear the voice of God. God speaking to him, and they had this dialogue. When we get to Isaac, God also spoke to him, but I believe also Isaac was aware of the voice of God because he witnessed God's relationship with his father. And his father had that open line of communication with God. I just want to say this to you right now. As you're raising your children, allow your children to see you involved in the relationship with God. If your children are old, it's never too late to still allow your children to see you have a relationship with God. I think about my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is a praying woman, and that's what you will see and hear from her children, that mama is a praying woman. Well, what will that do for the children? I pray that that draws them in to praying to God. So allow your children to see that. We also seen that God called Jacob. And we dealt with this on Sunday as God wrestled with Jacob all night long. And then Jacob surrendered to God, and Jacob goes on to say, I have had a face-to-face encounter with God. And so then he sits up there, altar there at Peniel. And whatever God uses to bring us near, we ought to make sure that we are responding appropriately. In this story, of Joseph, God gave him dreams. Now, he was able to understand the dreams, so in fact that he was able to share it with his brothers who hated him. Now, it says the more. They hated him because, one, Jacob loved Joseph. Now you got to remember back this generational curse that is happening. Remember that Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob. And so now you got this family dynamic where there's picking and choosing of children that causes other children to hate a particular child because of the parents. And I just said that to say, us as parents, we need to be aware of how we interact with our children, because some children are there to witness and be able to see what you're doing differently with them than to the other children. And so I just pray that we are mindful of how we treat our children together. So Joseph has this dream. His brothers are hating him for the dream. His dad is sitting there trying to determine what is he actually saying from this dream, but he held his thoughts close to him. As he is now in the understanding of how God maneuvers in calling particular children, as he was the second born and he received the blessings, he received the authorities over the family as diagnosed, as proclaimed, as given a message to Rebekah in saying so. And so Jacob here, he is sensing the Lord's involvement. I want to continue on in our readings as we move now from this prophecy of the Lord calling Joseph through dreams. Now let us take a look at how Joseph's life is unfolding as God is blessing and giving him success in all that he does. Look with me at Genesis chapter 39. I'm going to start off in verses 1 through 6, and then we'll move on to verses 19 through 23 of this chapter. In 39, it goes on to say, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captains of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. Now, so let me catch you up to speed with what's going on. The brothers have hated Joseph, and so they did things as a collective unit. All of the other 10 brothers, the 12th brother, Benjamin, had not been born yet. And as well, at this time he had, but not at the time where the brothers were hating him. And so they devised the scheme. They heard that he was coming, and so they were going to kill him. But then one of the brothers sat there and said, no, let's not kill him. Let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. And if you remember who the Ishmaelites are, that's Abraham's second son, or actually his first son. But I say the second son because it is Isaac that he loved, because that was the blessing, that was the promise that came from God. So the Ishmaelites took him down to Egypt. And so now he's being purchased. He's being a slave, being sold, and now being purchased by Potiphar. And we continue on with the story. And the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of the Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptians because of Joseph. The blessings of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now, I want to bring us up to speed. I want to take us back, and then I want to bring us forward. I talked about generational curses, but if you understand, there are generational blessings as well. This storyline of, the success of Joseph, the blessings from God to Joseph, we also seen in the midst of everything that Abraham was not entrusting God or not trusting God to be able to fulfill, God still blessed Abraham. He blessed him when he went into Egypt. He left Egypt with more than he came into Egypt. When he went into Gerar, when he told his sister also there, told his wife also there to be a sister, he left there with more than what he came. We find out with Jacob the same thing. When he goes on to his father-in-law Laban's, he prospered. He was blessed beyond measures, and God was there attending, blessing, and succeeding for him on behalf of him. And here we find in this account, even in the midst of being sold by his brothers, taken to a foreign land, he is still able to be blessed and succeed in the things that God had in store. Let me share with you this one bit of truth. No matter what the circumstances is, if God be for us, if God be for you, who can be against you? That's what we find in the New Testament scriptures as Paul outlines that to the Roman church there. God himself, as we see here, when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did. So not only is the blessings and success being felt by Joseph, but for those in the surrounding spheres, we're also being able to witness God bless those whom he has called. So now let us continue on to our next passage in Genesis chapter 39. Let us read verses 19 through 23. And it goes on to share with us, when his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, now before I even go there to the saying, where we are at in this particular story is that everything was placed into Joseph's hand as Potiphar had outlined. And so he was able to care for the house. Now, Joseph, in the storyline, it is also told, is a handsome man. So, in fact, that he catches the eye of Potiphar's wife. Now, Potiphar's wife makes advances at Joseph, and Joseph is trying to stand his ground, being an upright individual, understanding that he has been given the authority to be over everything in Potiphar's home, but not to take advantage of Potiphar's wife. Well, that's not her intentions. And so she goes and makes these advances. And one time he just runs off and he leaves his cloak. And she's embarrassed of all of this. And so she comes up with this story and she tells the household this story, that he made advances at her, that he came at her. He tried to do these wrong things. And so now she's telling the story to her husband and says, this is how your slave treated me. And so his master, Potiphar, burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoner was confined. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him, and he showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. And the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And so we find the Lord God again treating Joseph with favor, with kindness, with blessings, with success, and those in his sphere of influence being able to witness the hand of the Lord upon Joseph. Again, in verse 21, it says, and the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor. And the prison warden was able to witness this reality, this truth. No matter where we are in our life situations, as we are addressing our earthly conduct and our earthly lives, moving through it, there are going to be some high times and there's going to be some low times. But if we are those who are in the Lord our God, I reiterate once again, if God be for us, who can be against us? And we must understand that God is faithful and cares for his people. And yes, as I have reiterated over and over again, God is faithful to his plan, to his purposes. And we are the beneficiaries of God being faithful to himself. And just as we've seen in this relationship he's having with Joseph and calling him into. Let us continue moving on in our text here as we address the preparation of the Lord's servant. And if you would look with me in chapter 40, we are finding that Joseph is in prison. We've seen in the passage before, whatever Joseph was over, the warden trusted. He relied on Joseph to do well. He knew the favor of God was on Joseph. And so now it says, sometime later, starting in verse 1, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpreters belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Now we're going to continue in just a moment, but I want you to understand the story we started when Joseph was 17 years old. And he tells his family that he had a dream. And as he shares with his family these dreams, yes, they were angered, but what we are to get out of it as readers is that God gifted him with the ability to interpret dreams. In this particular passage, he sits there and says, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" I love this because whenever we are given by the Spirit of God to be able to do something in the supernatural, we should not take ownership as if this was something that was devised by us. Rather, it was gifted to us by God. Here, Joseph glorifies the Lord God by attributing that his ability to interpret dreams from his past now to his present, and to see the blessings of the Lord and his successes in his life, in the Potiphar's household, and yes, now in the prison. He knows that his life is being guided by God, and so therefore he wants to make sure he's giving God all the glory in anything, in everything that he does. So if you succeed in any way, in any manner, if you are blessed in any way, in any manner, what you need to know is that you would not have received any of those blessings or successes without God. If you have the ability to be able to speak in tongues or interpret tongues or heal those who are in need of healing or lead those who are in need of leading, teach those who are in need of teaching, to be able to help those who are in need of helping, if you are gifted in any way, that is not something of your own doing. That is by the blessings of the Lord your God, manifesting within you these gifts. So now Joseph, he is 30 years old, and we are about to find out that he has to interpret these dreams before the Pharaoh. But before we even go there, let me just share with you that these cupbearers had their dreams, and Joseph interprets the dreams right there in prison, and the cupbearer gets a blessing in the dream. He finds out that his life is spared, and the chief baker finds out that his dream interpreted by Joseph came with demise, his demise. And so now they're in the company of the Pharaoh, and just as Joseph was able to interpret their dreams and those realities came to pass, Joseph just said, okay, when you go before the Pharaoh, remember me. Remembering, saying that, so when you got the Pharaoh's ear, remember to tell the Pharaoh about me, who's sitting here in prison, being a good prisoner, because the warden has given him rule over those areas in which he was over. Tell them what I'm doing in here. And the cupbearer, he finds out he has favor with the Pharaoh, and he forgets about Joseph. So then we pick up the story a little bit later. And so now the Pharaoh has dreams. And now he's wanting those dreams interpreted for him. In the morning, starting in verse 8, his mind was troubled. So he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, today I am reminded of my shortcomings. So now his memory comes back. He was so excited about his life being spared that he forgot to share what he needed to share about Joseph. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now, a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard, who told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And the things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he quickly brought from the dungeon, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it, Joseph replied Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answers he desires. And so now in this preparation, now he's able to share with the Pharaoh the interpretation of his dreams. And now as we address those dreams, he once again attributes his ability back to God. The preparation of the Lord's servant, all those years taking place where God found favor, blessed Joseph, allowed him to succeed, interpreting dreams from his youth, and now standing before the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, to be able to interpret his dreams as well. And so now we come to find out that after all of this, he interprets the dreams, and now the Pharaoh sets him up, and he becomes the right hand of Pharaoh, taking over all the possessions, because the dreams unfold that what is going to come is 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And that in the 7 years of plenty, that he should go about, the country, Egypt, should go about storing up, not what only they use, but store up what is going to be used in the years of the famine. And this dream happens twice. And so Joseph goes on to share with him the reason why the dream happens twice is because that is repetitive. God is repeating unto you, displaying the urgency, displaying the importance, displaying once again, as I have shared on many occasions, that when it comes to the repetitions of the Lord's message, we need to take heed to what he is saying. And here Joseph is sharing with the Pharaoh, you need to take heed. I want to just share this with you. Years of preparation is necessary when it comes to this whole trusting in our God. Too often we are quick as sons and daughters of God to get through the whole spiritual growing pains. That's what I call it. And as we are dealing with the spiritual growing pains, we go in and we understand from the scriptures they're there to make us complete. They're there to make us mature, but we're not there to endure or be patient through them. And so I'm here to share with you that if Joseph didn't go through the things that Joseph was going through, I believe that his ability to stand confidently before King Pharaoh would not be there. But because of the preparations that has been taking place, God was able to mold him and make him into this human being, into this interpreter of dreams, to be able to stand now before the Pharaoh. And we take note of that as you continue to look at the patriarchs of old, as you take a look at the years of Abraham, going 25 years from the first call into the fulfillment of Isaac coming into the world. You see that as Jacob is taking in that time of spending with his father-in-law, those times. You see that when it comes to even Moses, who is penning this story, spending 40 years in the land of his father-in-law to prepare before he goes back to Egypt. You see the patriarchs of old and the preparation that is unfolding before them to make them ready for the call, the task at hand. Let's continue moving on to Genesis chapter 41. And in Genesis chapter 41, I want to outline for you the fulfillment of God's prophecy, the fulfillment that he proclaimed in Joseph's dream. Now, when I say the fulfillment, the true study of this fulfillment is going to come on Sunday, but I just want to bring to you how he's able to fulfill that dream that God puts before him in now what the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is about to declare. So starting in verse 31, it says, "So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, 'Make way!' Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Now let me stop there. Again, the whole story works together. Jacob gives Joseph, when he was young, because he loved Joseph, this coat, as the play goes on to say, the coat of many colors. His brothers were jealous. They hated him even more not only because of Jacob's love, but because Joseph was getting the benefits of his love on display for the rest to see in the family. And so now we come and he's dressed in the finest robes, linen, a gold chain, given a chariot, be called the second in command. And here the people are hailing, make way for Joseph, as what was said before by the chief cupbearer, a Hebrew. But let's continue moving on. Verse 34, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift a hand or foot in all Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah and gave him Ashnath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. I talked about the preparation. Each stage of Joseph's life after being captured, he was given success and blessings in Potiphar's homes. He was giving success and blessings in the prison. And here now the Pharaoh is giving him success and blessings throughout all of Egypt. All of this orchestrated by the great Almighty God himself, Joseph's God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And so we see this unfolding, and all of this is in preparation for Jacob and his family. But first, God had to orchestrate the events as outlined in his dream, where Joseph will be set up. And now here, his mother, his father, his brothers, his sisters will come and bow the knee to Joseph, who has been set up as the second person next to the king of Egypt. I want to share with you, God does bring dreams to reality. But I want to warn us about dreams and using God's name. We need to be very careful when we say that God told me in a dream, or some other medium that we may use. For if that does not come to pass, you make God out to be a liar. We live in a time and an era where there are those who want to make themselves look better, or look good, or look spiritual, or look righteous before mankind. And so therefore, they will use God's name and place God's name in the midst of something. Here in Joseph's case, he had a dream. And only time brought that to reality. He was 17 when his brothers sold him off, and now he is 30 when the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gives him this position to be able to fulfill the dream that God gave him back when he was a young lad. But what I'm sharing with you is we need to be careful in how we use God's name. How do we interpret dreams? If we believe that a dream is coming from God, then let's attribute that to God, but then allow time to reveal what God has said. Hear me. I can't dispute people's dreams. I do say on many occasions, time will tell. The warning that I'm setting forth for us today is let us not buy into the trend that people are using to put God's name into something that they have devised so that they can manipulate people into doing things that they were not going to do, or what God had not orchestrated events for them to do. So let us just be careful as I conclude our night session on that particular note. But let me give you some highlights, something to look forward to coming on Sunday. The Lord our God, He has a plan, He has a purpose, and He has a perspective. I place those under the will of God. And the will of God, as promised to Abraham, as promised to Isaac, as promised to Jacob, is now given into Joseph's hands. But the storyline continues, is what I want you to understand. And as the story continues, going from one member of the patriarch family to the next, I want you to understand that as your situations, your spiritual growing pains, they go from one turn to the next, that God's will shall stand. His plans, His purpose, His perspective is what's at stake. So let us continue to trust, let us continue to believe that the Lord our God, as we have declared already, if God be for you, who can be against you? Meditate on that until we see each other again. Continue going on and growing on toward greater faith. Good night, everyone. Thank you for your generous gifts. Thank you for supporting this ministry here at River of Life Church. There are 3 ways in which you can give. You can give as the offering baskets are passed at the end of the service, or you can mail your gifts in to 10021 Fountain Springs Court, Indianapolis, Indiana 46236. For those of you who would like to give online, please go to our website at riveroflifeindy.org/give. If you want to give a reoccurring gift, please hit the green button, and that will allow you to set up your account so that you can give that gift as generous as the Spirit of the Lord leads you. For those who would like to give to our expansion program, please hit the link that says ROLC Expansion. And we thank you all for your generous gifts.